Hold on a moment, Layla writes, seemingly in a slight state of shock. You're telling me that you're actually the one who invented the Brinhorn dispelling technique, the technique that completely revolutionized dispelling magic all around the world a few years ago, and that got included in most modern mage manuals today. Well, yeah, I don't mind all that much that Brinhorn took the credit, really, I say. It wasn't really that complicated of a concept to begin with. You just need to do everything in reverse: the incantation, the movement, the movement of the aura flow. But it's not like the idea itself is all that revolutionary. The really difficult part is in the execution. I have no idea how many tries it took Brinhorn until he could finally get the timing and the motions right. And even if we theoretically knew how the technique worked, it still took hours of me and Brinhorn racking our brains together trying to figure out the multitude of spells that have been used to set up some of those magical traps. Yes, but still, Layla writes, did it seriously not cross your mind that he should at least credit you for your own technique? He did ask me if it was okay for him to name the technique after himself. I told him that I don't really care all that much. Even if he were to credit me, what would he have named the spell anyway? Barry is the spelling technique? There are thousands of berries out there. How would anyone have known that it was me? To be honest, the annoying part for me wasn't the lack of credit, but the fact that after the whole episode with the maze, Brennan kept insisting that he wanted to introduce me to those scholars he knew so that he could research magical theoretical level together. But that by that time I already knew that none of the knowledge available in the world could get me what I wanted, and that the only hope of me being able to achieve my dreams was through the help of an magical artifact of some sort. So I refused him again and again. I had no interest in becoming a scholar. All I wanted was to become a mage. As soon as I found out a rumor about some new artifact, I left the town in which Brinhorn resided, and I haven't heard from him since. Then again, I can't say that I would be too surprised if I ran into him right here in Varathia one of these days. It did seem like the type who would join a tournament like this, so it's interesting. Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, that would make sense. It would make sense to a certain degree. Like for the common people, the Brinhorn dispelling technique would make sense because he can't just like Barry's dispelling technique. No one would even know who Barry is, especially in this day and age where there's like no. How would like a common person from a village or like from anyone from even a city would know? Like there's no photo or something. Like even getting that here in Varathia is super complicated, where they have like magical tech on another level. What's interesting to me is that he didn't even mention the name in like in his scholarly notes or something. Like he must have submitted it to like mage society or something. So I was wondering why he didn't. Maybe he just wanted to take credit, and since Barry wasn't all that interested in taking credit, he was like, I might as well take all the credit. But he could have given Barry credit right there, not maybe in the name, but he could have given the credit in the books. But again, it comes to the same point, like how do you define who Barry is? Like everyone fucking knows who Brinhorn is, but like how would you know who exactly Barry is? He's just a random person, so there's like, he's not famous. It's not like, even if he was named Barry and he was famous, like was super rich or something, and they were like, oh yeah, Barry, that rich guy, like, so he could have gotten the credit then. But even then, the fucking Brinhorn, even if he gave the credit, it wouldn't really reach back to Barry, so he was like, might as well take the credit for myself. I mean, especially since Barry didn't really care for the credit anyway. Anyhow, and who would join a tournament like this? Barry, what you have just told us is incredible, Layla's father said. Did not know that it was even possible to have such a high understanding of magic only from reading books. Yeah, but it's still not high enough, unfortunately, I said. I've been trying for days to find the types of loopholes that Aiden is using when casting his spells, but I'm still not getting any closer to finding them. The most I can do is figure out the stuff that he already used in front of us. In order to find new loopholes, I would need a whole much more intuitive understanding of how magic works. That brings me to another important thing. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Redzek, do you know if it would be possible for you to also unlock the magical stats from the stat device, or along with the hidden aura stats? If a magical stat you're referring to the magical knowledge and magical power stats, then I'm afraid the answer is no, Layla father says. The aura stats were only, I'm guessing the magical knowledge stat will give him like access to Magium, so he can like, since he's half-Laseth, he will be able to read it to some extent in some places or something. Then I'm afraid the answer is no, Layla father says. The aura stats were only hidden, but the magical stats were locked for a reason, and unless you know the right code, you will never be able to unlock them. If you try to forcibly unlock these stats without the code, you could risk permanently damaging your device. I wouldn't recommend it. Isn't there a way to crack the code without using brute force? Is there anyone aside from the higher ranked Laseth who might know the code? Why do you think the aura stats are less protected than the magical stats? I'm really interested in the second option. Is there anyone aside from the higher rank Lasethi who might know the code? But I highly doubt there is anyone. I'm pretty damn sure we're only going to be getting the code from the original Lasethi when Selkrom comes back for his second trial. So based on that information, I highly doubt this is going to be useful. So I'm just going to go with, why do you think the aura stats are less protected than the magical stats? Why do you think the aura stats are less protected than the magical stats? Those devices were made a very long time ago, so I couldn't tell you for sure, Leila Faida says, but if I were to take a guess, I'd say it's likely because they are locked away for different reasons. Their magical stats were probably first created in the hopes that they would work for regular Lasethi. Half Lasethi were never really seen as equal to pure blood Lasethi, so the locking of the magical stats was almost certainly put in place in order to make sure that the half Lasethi would never get access to these stats by accident. On the other hand, the aura stats were hidden for a safety precaution because they were still in an experimental state when the Lasethi stopped working on these devices. They never got to finish all the tests. That being said, from what I could gather, the three stats seem for most part functional, so you shouldn't worry too much about them failing on in a critical moment. Right, I say, I'm not entirely convinced, Tone. And I'm not entirely convinced. Or may I ask one question, Leila Father says. Why do you need to unlock the magical stats? As far as I'm unaware, only half Lasethi are able to use them. Oh, it's because I'm actually a half Lasethi, I say. I've even had the chance to use the stats before when I activated the device's emergency mode, so I already know that they work for me. But a half Lasethi, Leila's father says. Leila, did you know about this? Yes, I found out at the same time as him. He didn't know that he was a half Lasethi either until recently. In fact, he didn't even know that he had Lasethi blood in his veins at all until he joined this tournament. The more I find out about you, the more it intrigues me, Barry, Leila's father says. To be honest, there would be many more questions I'd like to ask of you, but I wouldn't want to take up too much of your time just for the sake of my curiosity. I'm done with Leila's device for now, but in order to work on yours, I'm going to need some time to work alone and concentrate. Could you come back here in a few hours or so? Normally I should be done by then. Of course, Leila writes as she picks up her stat device from the workbench. In that case, we'll leave you to your work. Come on, Barry, let's go back to the waiting room for now. Leila and both say goodbye to the doctor, writes it, and then we head back towards our friends through the same corridor that we used to come here. On our way back, we run into Peter, also into a few other people that we don't recognize. We're using the same corridor to arrive in different areas from the underground rebel base, and while we are walking, did they carve the base out of the stone, or were there like natural tunnels here? Leila takes the opportunity to ask a few more questions about my past. After walking for a few minutes, we finally made it back to the waiting room. Before we see that Darren and Hardwick have already been healed, that they were now waiting for us to return. Oh good, you're back, Darren says as he sees us get close. We were just having a conversation about what we should be doing next. What do you guys think that? Hey everyone, Leila writes in big blue circles, big blue letters, making Darren stop mid-sentence. Did you know that Barry is the one who invented the Bryn horn dispelling technique? What? Darren says as the others are looking towards me with puzzled expression on their face. No, don't be ridiculous. The technique was invented by Bryn horn. It's even in the name. I'm sure that Barry must have been joking and you simply misunderstood him or something. I wasn't joking, I say. I really did come up with that technique while I was working as Brynhorn's apprentice. I told him he could name the technique after himself because I didn't really care about that much about credit. I'm still not seeing what the big deal is though. It's just a technique like any other. Even if it hadn't been come up with, I'm sure that somebody else would have done it eventually. Barry, what are you saying? Darren starts to say, but he gets interrupted by Araka. He's not lying, Araka says in a most grim tone of voice, sounding almost as if she were on her deathbed. What the hell happened? I've been closely monitoring his aura all this time and he's not lying. No, this can't be possible. Not him, anyone but him. Come on. Why are you being so affected by this? Leila asked her. Like he said, it's just a simple technique. Even a regular person that can't cast any magic would be able to do at least come up with just a technique by themselves if they read enough books, shouldn't they? It's not just a technique, Araka says. Don't you get it? I've been alive for more than 10,000 years and I still never came up with this idea. It's so simple and yet somehow it never crossed my mind, and it wasn't for lack of trying either. Do you have any idea how incredibly difficult it was to dispel a complex spell before the invention of this technique? Hell, Hell, I even started using it myself because it was simply too good to pass up. But to find out this technique was invented by Barry, all this time I've been using a technique invented by Barry. Oh gods, I think I'm going to be sick. I'm a spirit in an amulet, but I feel like I need to puke. I can't, I don't. Suddenly, Arka starts making puking noises, even though it's obvious that she can't actually vomit in a corporeal form. The others are still looking a bit confused, not knowing exactly how to react, except for Darren, who's looking rather impressed. Well, I'll be damned, Darren says with a grin. The Bryn horn technique is actually what I used as a reference when I created most of the newer dispelling enchantments that are on my sword. But do you think that Barry would be the one who got the idea Barry would be the one who I got the idea from? Come over here, you sly bastard.